The verse that we're going to start with is Philippians 4:6. Some of you guys might be familiar with it, but it starts out, be anxious for nothing. And that's the title of my sermon, be anxious for nothing. And don't you love it when someone just tells you, don't be anxious? Oh, don't worry about it. Isn't that like the most helpful thing ever? And then they don't give you any like why or how to do it. I mean, a lot of times you do that with all sorts of stuff. When you're preaching from the pulpit, you'll say stuff like, do this, don't do that, but they don't tell you how or why. I don't think that's very helpful. So I'm going to actually give you some stuff that I don't have a degree in the brain field, psychology. I don't have a degree in that, right? Obviously, you can tell. But this is stuff that through the Bible and through listening to other people has helped me dealing with being anxious, with worry, with fear. And so I want to share this with you guys. I don't know if any of you guys deal with that on a very hard level, if it's really bad, or maybe it's just something every once in a while. You got a test coming up, you got whatever it is in your life that you feel anxious about, worry about, little things. So whether you're on this scale where it's anxiety is a big problem for you, or even if it's just a little thing that sometimes come up, I think this will help you. And even if you're sitting here and you're like, say my wife is probably one of those more just like carefree people, like naturally, like sure, like whatever, it's fine. If you're one of those people who worry doesn't ever come across you and you don't ever think about it, great, good for you, I'm happy for you, but still listen, because maybe there's someone in your life, because that's usually the way God has it happen. If you're somebody that's very good with this stuff, there'll be someone in your life that's not so good with it and they need your help. So this is some hopefully practical stuff that will help you with that, if maybe your friends or somebody comes to you. And I will say before I even start, if you are dealing with anxiety to whatever extent it might be, talk to somebody. Like that's before I even get into this, that's like one of the most important things you can do. Try to find somebody who like can actually help. Don't just talk to a friend that's got the same anxiety that you do, or that is going to give you some bad advice. But talk to parents, teachers, counselors, pastors, friends that are also hearing from God. Have those conversations with them, because it'll help you maybe just get stuff off your chest. They might have advice. Also, they can like tell you, hey, calm down, it's not that big of a deal. One thing when I talk to my wife, I'll like run a scenario through her head that is something that I'm anxious about that's coming up next week or something, and I start explaining why I'm so anxious about it. She's like, you realize how ridiculous that is? Like, there's no way it's going to be that bad. There's no way it can get to that point. So just having somebody that can kind of like keep you in check a little bit, that's why it's so important to have accountability and people in your life. But let's talk about this Philippians 4:6, be anxious for nothing. It might not seem helpful to just say, be anxious for nothing. Don't do that, right? I even said, let's talk a little bit more of the how and the why. But actually, be anxious for nothing, the first part of that verse, is actually the first step in helping with anxiety, because that's the first step, is to acknowledge that you have it. There's a great book by Pastor Levi Lusko. I don't know if any of you guys listen to him at all. He pastors a church out in Montana. But a book called I Declare War, and it's about the battle in your mind. So if any of you deal with some of the same stuff like I do, I highly recommend this book. Not that you guys want to read anymore when you're in school, but hey, summer's coming up. You might have some more free time. It's called I Declare War by Levi Lusko, and he talks about dealing with his thought patterns. And when it starts, you start to spiral. So ask me how I know about this stuff, right? I've been there. I don't know how many, preparing for this sermon and like thinking about it the night before and even going into it, I'm getting anxious about it, and I start to spiral about how terrible things could go. Just the way my mind works, I'm working on it. But this is stuff that has helped me. But so one of the things that Pastor Levi Lusko says in his book is he compares this thought pattern, this spiral, this anxiety spiral, to getting on the subway and heading the wrong way. So maybe you guys don't ride the subway. I don't know if you've been on the light rail downtown. But if you take the wrong one, if you get on the wrong one, you start heading to St. Paul. Maybe you're trying to get to the Mall of America. And you have to, the best way you got to recognize that you're on the wrong one. And you got to stop and get off. Because the longer you stay in that place, the worse it's going to get. You're just going to keep going further and further to St. Paul, further away from the Mall of America. So recognizing that you're starting to spiral, that you're starting these anxious thoughts is actually the first tip. And so when it tells you be anxious for nothing, it's actually a helpful thing. When we talk about worry and anxiety, the verse that I think about One of my favorite sections of the Bible is Matthew 6, 25 through 34. And I'm going to read you the whole thing. It's a little bit long, but there's a lot of good stuff in there, so I'm just going to read through it quick. Therefore I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body what you will put on. Is life not more than food, and the body not more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not more valuable than they? Which of you by worrying can add 1 cubit to his stature? It's a weird thing, cubit to his stature. But does worrying help? That's what I'm seeing. Different translations, can you add 1 year to your life by worry? No, you're actually probably going to shorten your life, right? If you're filled with worry and anxiety, and that it adds pressure. It's not good for your health, actually, so it'll probably take time away. So why do you worry about clothing? Considering the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin, and yet I say to you that even Solomon in all of his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Now if God so clothes the grass of the fields, which is today, and tomorrow is thrown in the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O ye of little faith? Therefore do not worry, saying, what shall I eat, or what shall we drink? What shall we wear? For these things the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knows that you have need of these things. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. And I love the whole thing because it's God's beautiful picture of he's providing for you. He's taking care of you. I don't know what it is that you worry about, right? It doesn't mention a math test in here. But all of these things that you might have going on in your life, God has you in the palm of his hand. God sees you and God's taking care of you. So whatever your worry is, right? Maybe it's relationships at school, friendships at school. Maybe it is a math test. Maybe it is financial provision, right? God is taking care of you, and you don't need to worry about that. And I love what it says at the end. For tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. Tomorrow's going to have enough problems. Whatever you're worrying about tomorrow might be difficult, and tomorrow might be challenging, but worrying today doesn't help tomorrow. It just makes today terrible, right? So it doesn't do you any good to worry. In fact, it just ruins today. It doesn't help tomorrow. And I do want to say that preparation and worry are not the same thing. But if you've prepared, if you've planned, if you've done the homework, if you studied for the test, and you're still anxious about it, and you're still worrying about it, that's when it's time to let it go, to give it over to God, right? So trust your plan and trust your preparation, but most importantly, trust God. So if you keep reading that verse, Philippians 4, 6 through 7, so it starts out, be anxious for nothing. But then it even tells you how to not do that. And it says, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ. So I love that because it gives you the answer. Don't worry, which is the first step. Just acknowledge that you're worrying. Don't do it. Try to stop, acknowledge it, do something. But then it says, this is how you deal with it. You pray, you give it to God, and then he'll give you that peace. Right? I don't like to think of God as transactional. I know some people like to think, pray and I'll get this, do good, I'll get this. But this is one of those places in the Bible where it really is that transaction. If you give your fear, your worry, your anxiety to God, he's going to give you peace. He literally promises that peace that passes all understanding. Those of you, if you've grown up in the church, you've probably heard that expression 1,000 times about God giving you the peace that passes all understanding. But this is how you get it. You have to give that to God in order to get his peace. If you're in fear and worry and anxiety, the peace isn't just going to come on you until you give that over to him. And when I say give it to God, I don't mean like this, you kind of give it to God. I don't know if any of you guys have ever done that, but I'm really good at kind of giving it to God. I'll be worried about something. Let's say it's with my job or with my career path or financially. And I'll say, God, I got to pray about it. God, I trust you. I give this over to you. Your will be done. And then I start to but if I did it this way, then it would go here. And I start planning myself. I'm an overthinker, if you didn't notice that yet. I overthink all these situations and how it could go. But that's not actually giving it to God. Giving it to God is actually letting go and saying, whatever happens, God, I know I'm in your hands and I know you got me, right? So I like to have a mental picture of what that looks like for me because I literally picture this every time I do it. And I know this is a dated reference, but some of you guys might catch me. Dante Culpepper to Randy Moss. That's what I think of, because, and not just because I'm old and Dante and Moss in their prime was like my prime years of watching football. I know I got some teachers that know what I'm talking about. Thank you. But I love the picture of Culpepper to Moss. One, because Culpepper was not smooth with it. Culpepper was just big, huge arm, just drop back and just chuck it deep. And I swear half the time he didn't know the playbook. He didn't know what was supposed to happen, but he trusted Randy Moss. So he threw it up to Randy Moss. A more current reference, right? Still football. So if you're not a sports fan, hold on for a second. But how about Kirk Cousins to Justin Jefferson? On 4th and 18 in Buffalo, right? He just trusted him. He just threw it up there because he said, you know what? I trust Justin Jefferson. I'm going to let it go. The thing about this Culpepper to Moss, Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, is once the quarterback throws the ball, there's nothing they can do. It's gone. It's out of their hands. You can't throw it and be like, oh, no, wait, he's covered. Let me go stop that. It's done. It's too late. So I'm telling you, when you give these things to God, you got to just chuck it deep. You got to just give it to God and trust that he's going to come down with it. In the case of Randy Moss to Justin Jefferson, more often than not, they came down with it. The case of God, he's got you, right? We just read that verse. He's more capable of handling this situation than you are. No matter how good or capable or how smart you think you are, God is much more capable. I'm going to say much more smart, but I think that's wrong. And I'm in front of a school and teachers, and I don't want to have bad grammar. So he is smarter than you, right? That's probably correct. God is much more capable. Another example, sorry, it's sports again. It's the way I think. If you're not a sports fan, I'm sorry. But I know basketball is big at Maranatha. I think it still is. It was when I was here. A basketball analogy, if you don't like football, the best basketball game I've ever seen in my life, or one of them maybe, Eastern Conference Finals 2008. It was the Celtics against LeBron James and Cleveland Cavaliers. And Paul Pierce and LeBron just went back and forth the whole time. Each dropped about 40 points, one of the best games I've ever seen in my life. Afterward, the media asked Kevin Garnett, what was the game plan? Like, what were you guys planning to do or trying to do in the fourth quarter of this game? Celtics pulled out the win, went to the finals. Lost to the Lakers, though. But they asked Garnett, what was the plan? What are you guys thinking? He said, it was real simple. We just gave the ball to Paul Pierce and got out of the way. Sometimes your best play, now if there's basketball coaches in here, I don't know, maybe they're telling you something different on your team. But for me, sometimes the best play is to give it to your best player and get out of the way. So I'm saying when you have anxiety, when you have worry, when there's something in your life that you're concerned about, give it to God and get out of the way. God is more capable than you to take care of these situations. If you try to do it yourself, you're more than likely going to screw it up, right? God can handle this stuff. And then I want to read the next verse after I read Philippians 4, 6, and 7. Philippians 4, 8, you guys might be familiar with. I remember hearing it a lot when I was going to Maranatha, when I was growing up in church. But I don't know if I ever heard it in this context. I don't know. I thought it was maybe like, don't think about girls or don't think about this. It's talking about your thought life. But it's right after these verses. So I think it aligns much better than maybe I realized. Or maybe I was taught it right and I just wasn't listening. But Philippians 4, 8 says, finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there's any virtue, if there's anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. And what it's telling me is don't be anxious, but pray about it, give it to God, and then you got to change your thoughts. You got to think about something else. You got to think about something good. Because if you're like me, and I think everybody works this way to an extent, I'm just an overthinker, so it may be worse for me, but you can't just not think about something. If somebody says don't think about it, you think about it, right? Let's do a little analogy. If you close your eyes and I say, don't think about a zebra, you're probably picturing a zebra right now. But if I say think about a giraffe, you're thinking about a giraffe, not a zebra anymore. You have to replace those bad thoughts with good thoughts. So just some real quick good thoughts. If you give it to God, think about the goodness that God has done in the past. Maybe he's delivered you through some things, or maybe he's just, hey, you know what? My family has food on the table. I don't have to worry about that. Think about that. Like, change your mindset to the positive things that are in your life, the things that God has done for you. You can also use your imagination to think about what if it goes well. I tell you these scenarios that my wife tells me, like, whoa, that's out of control, like it's not going to be that bad. If you could use that same overactive imagination to think about best case scenarios, what happens if that goes right, and go down that path instead? Use that same, what I believe is a gift from God, the way he created me, to think about, plan about best case scenario instead of worst case scenario, which I'm tend to do, right, most of the time. The other thing, just do something different, right? Just if you're just sitting there and you're worried about, maybe it's a test coming up, maybe it's a job or a bill or something, I don't know, whatever you're going through, think about that thing, right? Think about whatever in your life you worry about. Instead of sitting there thinking about it, give it to God and then go do something else. For me, it's basketball. I'm not that good, but it relaxes me. It gives me peace when I go in the driveway. I mean, it's when the snow eventually melts. I have a hoop in my driveway. I'll just go outside and shoot hoops, just for a little bit, just to calm my mind, just to do something else. There's not as many options in the winter. We're stuck in our houses, but hey, the sun's shining today. I think it's supposed to be 40, so maybe you can get out, go to a park, go for a bike ride, go do something. Just something to get your mind off of it. For me, it's never enough to just say, I'm not going to think about it anymore. I have to go put my mind somewhere else. I have to do something, and that could be play basketball. When I was in California, you'd go to the ocean, and I'm telling you, just sit out and looking at the ocean, just so peaceful, just fantastic. Can't do that anymore, but maybe a lake. You know, lakes are kind of cool too. You can go to the lake. Again, well, I guess you can go in the winter ice fishing. It's probably getting too warm for that now. I don't know. Is it too warm to go on the lake now? Is it going to melt? Yeah, they're saying yes. Don't. It's dangerous. So don't do that. If I don't go walk on the lake right now. But if you guys checked out, maybe some of you did, maybe you weren't listening. But I want your attention real quick, just for like 5 more seconds. If you didn't hear anything else I said, I need you to hear this. Don't be anxious. Just real simple. Don't be anxious. Give it to God and think good thoughts. If you remember those 3 things, don't be anxious, give it to God, and think good thoughts. I think that'll help you. Just those 3 things, even if you didn't remember anything else. That's how you replace the anxiety, the worry, the fear with a peace of God that passes all understanding. In situations that it doesn't even make sense to have peace, you can have peace when you let go and you give it to God, and then change your thoughts. Think about something else. Replace that with something else.